Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Marcus from TCG Discussions coming at you with a first place Sakazuki deck profile for the first tournament of OPO5 at my locals. Shout out to everybody who was there. It was a small tournament, 3 rounds. So it was pretty good overall. The deck is super duper strong. Obviously, it's Sakazuki. It's going to be, but I've had a lot of questions about the deck coming into the format, simply because there's a lot of unknowns with red coming back and what's going on in our meta versus Asia. And I can solidly say that while this deck is super duper strong, adjust this real quick. I totally believe at the same time that this deck is not unbeatable by any stretch of the means. In fact, I'm 100% certain that I lost my Whitebeard matchup if it wasn't for the SCR that I played. 100%. Like, the matchup was just dead in the water. Whitebeard is going to be a force this format, 1,000%. If you don't believe that, you are just going to lose. I only won because of the text that I play in the deck. These are the prize cards that I got today. I got the winner kid. It's a starter deck kid. It's got like blocker, and then .x1 you can set it to active, which is really cool. So it can swing for 8 and then restand to be a blocker. As a 7K blocker, that's like nuts. I like the card a lot. This is the Kaido. I really hope to get a winter version of this, because I imagine the winter version of this would be worth some money, especially since it sees a lot of play, especially in Purple Luffy. And then Starter Crocodile blocker, pretty good too. So super happy with the results. It was really hard fought in the final round for sure. That was probably the second best game of One Piece I've ever played in my entire life. If you end up watching this video, you're still at number one, because that grind game with Green Purple Dofi was nuts. But I'll talk about my matchups when I get to the end of the video, because we're going to do a little bit of an exposition on basically how to play in a Whitebeard with this deck, because there's a lot of tripwires in the matchup that if you run into them, you'll just basically lose. So yeah, let's get into it. One huge shout out that I need to give is Victor for letting me borrow this. I've ordered an Alt Art Sakazuki, but he let me borrow this for the deck profile, and I was playing with it tonight. So super lucky, brought me success, and thanks to you, Victor. So let's get into the list. Start off for brand new. I think if you play this at 3, you're kind of doing something wrong. Consistency is super important, and plussing is super important, especially when you go first. Like, brand new is just going to eventually generate value for you at some point in the game, and if not, you can always pitch him with leader effect. That kind of like reminds me, I probably should talk about the leader because he's new. I mean, obviously, if you've watched any of the OPO5 stuff, you know what he does. But the leader, for those of you, if you're new to the game or getting into OPO5 and you're thinking about playing Sakazuki, so once per turn activate main, you can discard a card or trash a card and then draw a card from your hand. And then when attacking, you can give a character -1. That -1 effect probably should have been done X1, but you know, we'll take it for 0 cost. Next is probably the most important card, especially in matchups where your opponent's endgame is tall, and that's Kuzan. In my testing yesterday, I currently am 5 losses, 2 wins against Katakuri, and the one game that I saw Kuzan, I didn't see Kuzan in any of the games but one. And the one game that I saw Kuzan early, like where I could play it on curve at 4, I blew him out of the water. So this card is insane. I see someone's played at 3. To me, it's a 4 of for multiple reasons. It replaces itself, which is important for your advantage. Helps you see cards that you may want to cycle or draw into to remove. And if he's a brick, you can just cycle it with leader. Like that's just like one of the high points of the card, and that's why he's the second like card in this profile video, because he's just that important. Next on to for Borsalino. There's not a lot to say. It's a 6k blocker on your opponent's turn, and it cannot be KO'd by effects. So in the L matchup, it's super strong. This card's more expensive than this one, and I'm telling you that this card is more important in a lot of matchups than this one. This one should be the one that's worth like $30, not this regular SR. So next on to some of the new cards from OP05. Rebecca. Sakazuki, black in general, and I talked about this in my tier list video. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and check it out. But Rebecca has boosted black to an entirely new level. Her synergy with every card in the deck is just insane. She's a blocker, 4 cost, 0, 1k counter. She probably shouldn't even have counter on her. She's that broken. But on play, add up to 1 black character with a cost of 3 to 7, other than Rebecca, from your trash to your hand. Then play up to a character with a cost of 3 or less from your hand, rested. So there's lots of characters that you can grab. Brand new is one of them, so that's what I talked about with like advantage. Like you can dig for a card if you need to, but you're mainly going to be playing a card that's coming up here later, Hina. And Hina's ability on play, when I get to her, we'll talk about it, but she minuses a card 4 cost, which is massive with your leader, because basically like between the Hina generation to the board and your leader effect, something can get minus 5k, which is just absolutely insane, and something that black seriously needed when it comes to minus effects. But Rebecca's like way overtuned. Next is the most overtuned card that they've probably made in the game, and that's Rob Lucci. The previous Lucci card is fair. This one is just stupid, like completely stupid. But what he does is on play, you may place up to 3 cards from your trash at the bottom of your deck in any order, and then you can up to one of your opponent's cards with a 2 cost or less, and then a card with 1 or less. So you can literally remove 2 threats at the same time with him, and there's lots of cost reduction in the deck with other efficient cards that will come up later. But this is just absurd, right? Like him and like Rebecca having 1k, I just don't get that. I mean, I guess she doesn't have any power, but like this is a 4 for 6 that can kill 2 cards. And it just doesn't get more efficient than that. There's certain decks that they walk right into it. And he's just an absurdly broken card. He can pressure Whitebeard. He can get rid of some small guys, or just outright, get rid of any big card that you can reduce with your leader effect and other effects that you have in your deck. So I just don't know why they went this route, just a KO2. It's one of the other cards I think that is also incredibly overtuned is the Sabo that just came out. He's a 6 for 7, but he gets a KO 2 cards 4k or less, and he runs into the same vein with this card. Obviously, it's a little less dot efficient, but reducing power there's lots of cards that reduce power. So like, yeah, it's just insane. So, but Rob Lucci, insane card, worth every penny of the $2 that this SR is right now. I would pick up a play set of this just to have on hand, even if you don't play Sakazuki, just to have for black in general. It's like going to be a staple for years to come. One of the most broken cards that they've ever printed in a structure deck with Rebecca is Hina. And on play, like I said, she reduces a card 4/4. So for 4 Dawn, you play a total of 7 costs worth of characters. You play 2 of them. She's a 3 for 5, they'll be in rest, but she reduces something 4. So between her and the leader, that's a total of a cost minus of 5 to a card. And it's just incredibly efficient. Produces an attacker or a body, for them to swing into, and could just pose a lot of problems. So and then the fact that she aids in getting rid of a card during one turn, and then on the next turn she's like a clapback swing, is just really strong. We don't play 4 of her though, because honestly, she can brick up the hand really easily. And 3 is enough to sear her. You only need to have 1 in your drop. So like it's not like Kuzan where like you would want to see that properly on curve. And then obviously she has an on play effect, right? So you could play her directly from your hand. Just situational, but if I see her in my hand, she is automatically the first card I pitch no matter what. Next, on to one of the other important cards, Mancherry. You only play her as a 2 of, and that's all I recommend. I would not recommend playing 4 of this card. If you play 4 of this card, like you're trolling yourself. But she has an activate main for 1. You may rest this card, and then place 2 cards from your trash at the bottom of your deck in any order, and then add up to 1 black character with a cost of 3 to 5 from your trash to your hand. This can get you Rebecca. It can get you Rob Lucci. So it's just really, really efficient at getting those cards back. And a card that, like, again, black being able to just basically plus out of their drop area. This card, if it sits on the board for multiple turns, can just be a complete thorn in your opponent's side. And she, like, again, she's basically a blocker because, like, they're going to need to get rid of her unless they can get rid of her with an effect. Next, we play 3 7-drop Borsalino. Borsalino on play, bottom decks a card 4 or less. He's a little bit more efficient than Mihawk because obviously Mihawk costs 9 Dawn. But between Great Eruption and your leader effect, you can remove any card in the game with Mihawk. Whereas him, you're going to take a little bit more work to do. But in my testing, I've decided to mitigate that by increasing the one of the event cards that you'll see later. But 3 is a great number. I wouldn't run more than this. I usually end up pitching at least 1 per game off of the leader effect, because there's just going to be matchups where it's not necessary. He is your tall your tall end, part of your tall end. So you have to there's certain matchups like against Whitebeard, for example. I stuck 1 Borsalino and he stuck around the whole game and he was a complete menace because even if they play 9 beard to make the leader go 8, you can still swing at it. So it's just super, super important. And Mihawk would obviously be more efficient because he's 9k, but a 7 for 8 is not bad. Onto our 2k counters, we play 4 Tashigi and 4 Zuru. These are the only 8 that we play. I do not play Bartolomeo, although I do have him. Bartolomeo can come in hot and clutch with some of the mathing on your Dawn turns. Sometimes you need a blocker, you get to 3 Dawn left after mathing out properly how to get rid of a card, and the blocker would be useful. And he would be a good 2k. But the reality is that you can recycle Tashigi off of Rebecca. So, that's generally what I do to get more counter back in my hand. And it kind of mitigates the offset of not having a higher number. It's just like a niche little play. Obviously, Tashigi has a rest effect. If you don't know, you can rest her and I believe give up to one of your opponent's characters -2. So that's super important. And then Suru has an on play, give something -2. So there's times where if you need to get the math correct, you can play them. And Suru is obviously the more efficient one for that because it's only 1 Dawn. Next, on to the third most overtuned card. There are 4 overtuned cards that were printed. Rob Lucci, Rebecca, good old Sakazuki, and then this card. The leader, the 2 other cards I just mentioned, and then this card, Hans Blaze. Activate main. Up to one of your leader or character cards gains 3,000 power during this turn. Then place up to one of your opponent's cards with a cost of 2 or less at the bottom of its owner's deck. A character card, not any card, but just a character card. This is insanity. I have no idea what they were thinking when they made this card. This card should not have a plus 3k on it, and yet it does. Simply turning Brennu into a 6k attacker can threaten Whitebeard while removing a card. That's just absurd. And it makes your in the math, the way it works out with what they play, they play Ezo pass, right? And then they buff up Ezo, swing 5, and then they swing, and then you'll play Brennu, and then they'll swing and clap back or whatever. And then on the next turn following that, you can bottom deck the Ezo with this, and then make Brennu 6, and then swing for 6 or swing for 7 if you want to, like, or play another Renew. It just gets really, really insane. And this is one of the top cards in the deck that you end up using to bottom deck your opponent's stuff if you don't outright destroy them with Lucci. And then it has a trigger effect, return up to a character 3 or less up to your opponent's hand. That trigger effect can come up, but mainly you don't really use it for that. I think I've done that maybe once in my testing since I've got the deck put together, which was like 1 or 2 days ago. So other than that, like it just doesn't really come up that much. And if your opponent's walling up, they're like with chump blockers, they're probably going to die to Rob Lucci anyway. Next, Great Eruption. This card is worth every single penny that it is worth right now. It is easily one of the most broken cards ever, and that's ever been printed for an archetype color. It has an activate main to draw one and give it to one of your opponent's -2 cost, and then it has a trigger effect that your opponent chooses one card from their hand and trashes it. So for 1 Dawn, you -2, so it's a Suru, and you draw a card, so it replaces itself. And getting cards like this into the drop area is really efficient with Ralucci's effect, because you have to bottom deck 3, and playing like 2 of these to like -2 cards. You know, like if, for example, like in the Kata matchup, like if they have Parasparrow and like a blocker Sanji on the board, 2 of these outs both of them with Rob Lucci like right away. So like for 6 Dawn, you get rid of 2 cards, and you basically filtered 2 more cards, new cards to your hand with this. It's just insane. Yeah, it's really strong. Next, this is a little bit different from most lists that I see, but I play 3 Ice Age. So you will never have an issue dealing with low-cost cards. You will always have an issue with dealing with high-cost cards. And the taller your opponent can go and spam the board, the harder the game becomes. And Hom Blaze is one of the most efficient ways to remove cards, because it's only 2 Dawn. So if you can effectively handle reducing the cost of the cards with less Dawn and less Dawn usage, like Rebecca and Tahina is a 4 cost Dawn play, right? And it might be better if like you're playing yellow, for example, to have Borsalino so that your card can't get just thunderbolted away over Rebecca, or there might not be a good target for Rebecca in the drop, right? Sometimes you just don't have Hina in there. So what Ice Age does, activate main, one of your opponent's cards gets -5. It's just absurd, right? So between the Hound Blaze is bottom deck 2 or less. So between Ice Age and your leader, the card could be an 8 cost and it's gone with Hound Blaze. So like that is just super insanity, like, to me. And then think about it this way: 1 Great Eruption and 1 Ice Age, and literally any card in the game with your leader effect can be removed, like by Hound's Blaze, which is just absolutely efficient, right? That is 3 cards out of my hand to remove a 10 cost. One of those cards replace itself, so it's technically 2, and I get 3k power to any card for the next swing. Just insanity. So yeah, Ice Age at 3 is a high recommendation. And this next card is definitely a card that people do not play at all, and it's Gum Red Rock. I play 2 of it, and I recommend that every Sakazuki player play this card. If you take anything away from this video, it is that this card is snapped in this deck, because there's three main reasons. Most of the game, right, going up into a 10 Dawn turn, you are going to be focused on using all of your cards to manage their board, build a board of your own, and then reapply pressure. Take away, reapply pressure. That's the name of the game with him. And if you get to a point where your opponent's just playing 8 drop, 7 drop, 8 drop, 9 drop, 10 drop, you're going to start running out of ways to just get rid of the cards. This card outright answers anything. And for 6 Dawn at your 10 Dawn turn, you can still play a Rebecca. You can still play a Borsalino. You can still play a Rob Lucci. So this card solves the top end problem. It just solves a 10-drop Doflamingo. It solves a Big Mom, right? You just need the matchup knowledge on how to play it properly, and then you move on. So it's just an incredibly efficient card. If you don't know what it does, if you're new, activate main, place up to one of your opponent's characters at the bottom of the deck, just for 6 Dawn, get rid of it. So they invest 10 Dawn and end their turn. And you just get rid of that card. And that is absolutely important, imperative, and broken. It also has a trigger effect that is insane, especially against yellow. So its trigger effect is you place up to one character with a cost of 4 or less at the bottom of its owner's deck. So you can red rock a blocker off the board, right? They play, they have like their 4 for 5 or a Rob Lucci, which is a 4 for 6. They run into this in life. You just get rid of the card. Their Borsalino, you get rid of it. It's just an insane card. Like, it's honestly one of the best cards in the deck by far, because it eliminates you having to math everything out and having the proper cards. If the threat is there and it needs to be taken care of, Red Rock gets rid of it. So for that, I recommend playing 2 in my testing. 2 is more than enough. You don't need to play 3. It's not like this card and this card are not in the same conversation, right? You would rather Dawn efficiently get rid of cards. Like if you could get rid of the cards on 4 Dawn, right? Ice Agent is something else that's better than spending 6 because you can do other things. But there's just no question, right? If they're going to play multiple Big Moms in succession and keep regenerating their life, next turn I out the card, play Borsalino, say have something else. Like there's just nothing else to talk about. Like it's just really strong. And the final card of the deck, and I want to play 2 of it, and it is the only reason why I beat Whitebeard tonight, is the new 10-drop Kaido. This is probably the most slept on secret rare in the game. Like everyone knows about Gear 5 Luffy taking another turn. Everyone knows about 9-Beard coming back, right? Everybody knows about like Shanks Rush and, all the Yamato secret rare for everything else. Like this card is busted. Okay. It is not a card that you will play in every game, and that's fine, right? Unlike 10-drop Kuzan, if you play 10-drop Kuzan, I'm not saying you're wrong, because during your turn, he's an automatic -5. The problem is if they out the 10-drop Kuzan, you don't get any value. This card gets its value right away and then turns into a beat stick. So what does he do? For 10 Dawn, he's a 10 Dawn, 12k attacker. And on play, if your opponent has 3 or less life, draw 4 cards. This is busted with this leader, okay? The part of the issue with Sakazuki sometimes is if you've had to get rid of your opponent's board due to pressure state early, you will get low on hand size. In the Whitebeard matchup, the primary reason that they will beat you every time is their hand advantage. If you can keep up with the hand advantage and put a card on the board that they basically cannot out, you win, right? And I won because of this card. So let me explain my matchups now that I'm at this card, because this card actually was the only reason why I beat Whitebeard. And I'll be real with you, I got a second one. I'm probably going to end up playing 2 of it in the deck and find some space. I'm not sure if I'm cutting Ice Age or something else, but I want to play 2 of this card. So my matchups, round 1, played Blue Dofi, beat that. And then I played Enel, I beat that. And this card came up in the Enel matchup too, just basically because I had double Borsalino blocker and I could just play it. And because I did that, I drew 4 cards. I'm sitting there with a 10-card hand, and now my opponent is just like going to be literally dead in the water, because yellow has an extreme problem outing out 10-cost cards that just aren't turned sideways. And even if they do, he has 12,000 power. So like defending him for like Enel, Yamato's 9, they still need 3 Dawn just to challenge him, or something else to boost the Yamato. So this card it handles that, right? Kaido, being what he is the only reason why I beat Whitebeard. So in the finals, and that was my last one, which was Whitebeard. So Well, let's just skip the early game because I basically played. That's nice. You put cards on the board. Let me get rid of them. And then we got to a point where he played his first 9-drop Newgate. And then I ended up, the turn before that, I established a Borsellino and got rid of one of his cards. I believe it was, I think one of his Luffy's, his Rush Luffy. I ended up getting rid of that. But Rush Luffy is like an insanely powerful card against this deck in general because it does heavily rely on its blockers to like kind of wall up and then like defend those blockers and then like use them eventually to like attack. Or if you have to pressure, you just pressure the blockers right away. But there was a critical moment in the game where I had all 10 Dawn, one Borsellino. He has Newgate on board. He had just played his Newgate. And then I had a Borsellino blocker, like right next to the other Borsellino. So I have one blocker. I have 2 life left. He played 9-beard. He's at 2 life, and he's not going to be able to, he's not going to have to take life, right? So I have a choice. I can't out it. I can wall up with more blockers, but they'll probably just die. And I may not have the counter to get out of like all of the attacks if he plays like Rush Luffy and everything else. Between the leader attack, the 9-beard, and that, right? So the issue is that when I have 2 life left, it's a 6k or higher if he wants, and then it's a 10k at my life. I can block, and then like he can play Rush Luffy and then just attach Dawn, and then my blockers don't matter. And that was like the part that I'm scared of, because the way Whitebeard wins is he gets you to 0 and then just says, I have 20 cards in hand, try and beat me. And then when you fail to do that, invest all your Dawn, I clap back huge with whatever's on the board, and he already has Newgate. So I slap this bad boy down, I draw 3 2Ks and a Kuzan, and I pass. And there's just no way he can beat me. And this next play was another 9-beard. And then he swung. He swung at my Borsellino. I blocked it. And then he swung at life, and I countered out. And then he played another 9-beard. Okay. So he has now 2 9-beards. One of them's turned sideways. Okay. My next turn, I filter out Kuzan and draw Ice Age, and I have a Hound's Blaze, and I have a Great Eruption. Okay, so I attach 2 Dawn, I think, to Kaido, this Kaido, after I played him, and swing 14 straight into the first 9-beard that was turned sideways. He countered out. I think he spent like a Rad Beam or like a guard point in a 2K, but he ended up using 2 cards. And by this time, his hand size was like 3. It was getting kind of low. And because he's not plussing anymore off of taking his life. And so like now the fact that I have this 4-card swing, it caught me up an advantage because he's taken 4 life. I've taken only 2, so he's 2 cards ahead of me plus whatever other advantage he has. He started the game going second, so he drew another card and he played Izo, so he has like another replacement card on top of it. And I didn't see Brando at the start of the game, so that wasn't really a thing. But all that to say, so he counters out of that, right? And then the 9-beard that's standing, I Ice Age it. I swing with leader, so reduce it from, reduce it 5, reduce it another 1, 6, and then I play the Great Eruption, and then reduce it down and draw a card, and then I play Hound's Blaze, boost my Borsellino all the way up to 11, bottom deck the standing 9-beard, and then with my remaining Dawn up to 4, leaving 4 up. So I Ice Aged, Hound's Blazed, and Great Eruption. That's 4. I took 2 more Dawn, attached 13, swung at 10, and killed the one that was rested. If I wasn't playing this card, That was not possible. And he wins the game. Like, I tell you that story to tell you that in that matchup, this card was the difference. This was the only card that made the difference. It got me the cards I needed. It gave me the counter power to survive on the clapback on the previous turn. And I have my Borsellino blocker, and I had 2 Borsellino blockers. I played 1 Borsellino at the end of all that. So now he has no 9 beards on the board going into his next turn. He plays another 9 beard. So I got 9 bearded 3 times in a row. But because I drew 4 cards off of this, his 9 beard literally didn't matter. Because now when I start swinging his life, now after getting rid of the 2 9 beards that were on the board, I now get to swing at his life for 12. It doesn't matter that he's 8. He has to spend 3 cards out of his hand just to protect it, or use the Rad Beam into what is it? Rad Beam into bring him to 12, and then another card to get out of it. Guard point would still be a guard point and a 2K. But that matters a lot. And I still have my 7 drop Borsellino for 8 on the board. So basically, I won the game solely because this card existed. And there's no chance I would have won without it. Huge shout outs to you, Oscar. That was an insane game. It was my first time, honestly, playing against Whitebeard. And it was literally like the first game I'd ever played against it. And if it wasn't because of this secret rare, I would not have won the game. Shoutouts also to the New Dawn. This also comes in OPO5. It's shiny. It's Luffy uppercutting the crap out of Kaido, the savior of the day. So, yeah, that pretty much does it for my Sakazuki deck profile. Changes I would make, I need to make a concession to play a second one. Because I'll be also honest, there's times where I draw this card early, and because he's like the one of, I don't want to get rid of it, but he's the worst card in my hand, and I should probably get rid of it. There's times where it's just obvious that you're going to win and you don't need the card so you can get rid of it, but it would be nice to have 2. I'm not sure, maybe reducing Red Rock by 1 for a second one, but that doesn't seem right either, because you want to see this card, like, you want to see the card. So, like, I don't think reducing Red Rock is a good idea. Maybe cut Ice Age. I don't know. But what I do know is that Sakazuki is an insane leader. I've talked a lot on the channel, especially with my tier list video, about how he is not like the de facto tier 0 best broken leader. But he's incredibly powerful. Like not bad decks, but like tier 2 decks get ran over by him. And that's just a fact. Like, he clearly, like Whitebeard, power creeps certain decks. And that's the thing about it, though. We're in a meta where Whitebeard exists, where Kata exists, this deck exists, Purple Luffy exists, NL exists, Red-Green Law is now back at full power. Like, and Red-Purple Luffy, oh, I can't believe I almost forgot about that. Like, these decks are clearly in a tier of their own. And, like, there's no way that he will be at the top without an insane fight every single time. And the Kata matchup is awful. It is just absolutely awful to play against. They have so many, like, you get rid of their board and then you swing at their life and they play another card. And it's just like, oh my God, please. Same thing with like an L. Like, an L is full of triggers. They're regenning their life, or they're playing Satori, or they're playing like Sanji or something else. It's annoying. But, like, honestly, you play your cards right, you can just handle it. After I got waxed last night by Katakuri, I decided to come home, build a variant of my own, and then just run test sessions against it so I could figure out how to play. And I finally solved it a little bit, but, like, it's still extremely difficult. Suggestions in the matchups, just to give you guys a little bit of knowledge. So in the Kata matchup, you take all of your life early. Don't take it stupidly, right? Like, don't just take all your life and have, like, no fallback, right? Like, if they swing for 5 and you have a Borsellino on board, you don't need to take your life. You can just chump block that, right? But do not let Big Mom take 2 of your life. If she takes 1, it's not terrible. But if she takes 2, you've lost the game. Like, that's just it. You're not going to beat that deck while they're regenning 2 cards that you're not going to get, right? Because when they regen life, they get those cards of their hand. They're triggers. They give effects that slow your game down, pass the turn back to them. That's one of the great things about Katakuri. So by removing the fact that you're not going to lose those 2 cards, you want to take that life early. And another thing is when your hand size gets low and you want a card that can challenge Big Mom, that's again where Kaido comes in. Super huge. In the Whitebeard matchup, from my very, very limited experience playing it, because this is my first time, there are 2 things that I would suggest to you. I already know what Red's game plan is going into it. It's Rush. Anything with the Rush tag is bad news for Sakazuki because they've gotten immediate value out of the card. That means that when they play the card, even if I remove it next turn, the card had value by attacking. It's not like Yellow, which Yellow got a card that kind of solves that problem in Rush and L, but like the card gets value by swinging at you, forces you to either counter out or block, and you lose a character. In the Red matchup specifically, there are the Rush cards that are the hardest are the ones that either pop your blockers, this would be like the 10 drop, reduce their cost, that would be Ace, and the Luffy. The Zoro it's good, but it's okay. It's not the greatest, but it can be annoying, especially with Law. If Law gets to just restand it, that can be pretty bad. Same thing for, the Rush Luffy. If they can get like a Rush Luffy that's unblockable and it gets to restand, like it's bad news bears. But specifically, right, against Whitebeard, you cannot go below 2 life. Like early. You can't. If it is avoidable and you can deal and handle their board and somehow remain at 2 life, that seems to be the sweet spot. Because Whitebeard's condition, as I explained before, is shotgunning you after you tried to return clapback and it doesn't work. And even if they play 9-Beard, it's now an 8k leader, right? And so then 1 Rad Beam takes them to 12, which makes like your attack math really bad. You don't want to go below 2 life. Why is that? Because if they do and have Rush Luffy that's unblockable, you've basically lost the game. Okay? You need the life cushion to make their turns last as long as possible and get your life as like hard as possible. So you just want to wall up, sacrifice the characters at good points with your blockers to mitigate damage or combo out when you can. And again, this card came in clutch because I was able to draw all my 2Ks and then just basically get out of attacks that were low. And the other way you beat it is by matching the leader. You never want to go over unless it's massively over. So for example, when they play 9-Beard, he's an 8. This 12k swing demands 3 cards out of their hand unless they have Rad Beam. Or, I guess, guard point. And if they spend their guard points every turn and another card to get out of it, that's 2 cards out of their hand. The Borsalino, when they're at 6, same thing. When they're at 6, it's going to cost them the guard point, which basically that happened 3 turns in a row while that Borsalino was on the board. It costed him a guard point. It costed him a guard point. That's a guard point when they have like 7 Dawn open that they just can't get at you, right? So you don't want to overcommit until you know they're done. And this card finished the game for a 22 swing, right? When they're forced to take their last life and they're staring this card down and they have 5 cards in hand with 1 or 2 Dawn open, it doesn't matter. 22, they're done, right? You could have like 22 could be it'd be 14 and then 4 2Ks. They still can't get there. they still can't. 3 2Ks. It would take them, what would it be? 2 Rad Beam. It'd be 14 and then 4 2Ks. So it'd take them 7 cards out of their hand to get over a 22K. And again, because of this Kaido existing, it's what we do out here. Green, you pretty much blow up everything that they do. But when they get to 10 cost Dofi, it can be pretty problematic because of your leader. And that is where this card comes in, because it just solves the math problem. And then they don't get immediate value out of it. Also, when they play 10 cost Dofi, that's like basic permission for you to drop down Kaido and say, I dare you to swing with it. And then I already talked about Katakuri. Katakuri and Enel, they run into the same vein, but this deck kind of bodies Enel because, like, while they can play a whole bunch of cards, if they don't vomit to the board every time and all their triggers out of life just don't keep vomiting cards, you eventually win because it's a slow game of attrition. You see this card, you see, like, your other top-end Borsalinos, and then you just start establishing cards that they don't get rid of, and you just run them over. But, again, you don't have to worry about 10 mom in that. But one thing I will say about the Enel matchup that you have to not walk into, and I literally told my opponent this, like, if you have, let's say you have 2 swings, right, and they have 2 life, do not swing, okay? Don't swing. Establish your board, get some presence, and then swing. And the reason why you want to do that is so that they do not get value out of Yamato. You deny them value out of Yamato until it's lethal for them. Like it's lethal. Like, you better have triggers that protect yourself. Otherwise, you're not giving them Yamato ramp 2. Because again, if you don't know, with Enel, he gets to replace a life, pitch card from hand, right? You have at 2 life, you have to swing at them for 1 life, 2 life, the replacement life, and then a 4th time. So it requires 4 attacks. If you don't have 4 attacks, there's no point in resetting that number every time and giving them more cards. Purple. In the purple matchup, Magellan hurts a lot. Never blow up Magellan with Lucci unless it's your only option. And then always bottom deck at Red Rock can kind of help with that. When they play the 10 drop to take another turn, if you smell that that's the only option for them, make sure that you wall up, right? That's where you want to use your blockers. Red Purple Luffy, unfortunately, Red Purple Luffy has access to Diablo Jambe, and there's pretty much nothing you can do about it, right? They just run you over. Like, whether that be from the 10 drop, taking another turn and then Diablo Jambe into whatever, or their leader being Diablo Jambe and then 15, there's nothing you can do. You basically have to have high life and not drop to 0. That's like my only recommendation. Defend when you can. It's a little bit difficult because he's 6k and then like he's pretty aggressive. But Red Purple Luffy spends a lot of time ramping until they get to about 7. Then they want to play Kid, and then they want to play Ninebeard, and then they want to play the 10 drop after establishing the board. Save your removal for those big cards, and then get rid of them. Red Rock also really helps because, like, even if they do play 10 drop early, you can just Red Rock the card away and then just, like, get rid of it. And then if not, you can just math it easy with your other stuff. So, and then the mirror. I haven't played the mirror, but I've watched a lot of it. Basically, with the mirror, you want to edge out by basically playing your higher cost cards and going as wide as possible, saying you can't really use Lucci. In the mirror, though, Sabo is super important. As you probably saw on the list, I'm not playing Sabo. The only reason why I'm not playing Sabo is because he's really inefficient against Katakuri. And your Borsalino blockers can't get popped by... this Borsalino cannot get popped by Rob Lucci, so it doesn't really matter, although it can get bottom decked. With Hans Blaze, anything can get bottom decked. And so that's also basically how you win that matchup, is with bottom decking, and we play 2 more cards that bottom deck their top end more than us, so their 7-drop Borsalinos can just go take a hike. But that's a war of attrition, and you basically want to keep counter removing each other, but like getting that edge in extra swing. And this card will put the matchup over the top for sure. Like this comes down, they don't have it. It doesn't even matter that they have Kuzan. I do not care if they play, even if they do play Kuzan, it's like, oh yeah, all your cards are just going to Hound Blazed and Rob Lucci pop to the bottom of your deck. Yeah, that's like totally fine. I play this, draw 4 cards, basically do the same thing, remove your red rock your Kuzan, and then like it gets no value. Because the turn that they play Kuzan, that Kuzan doesn't get value for them. So if you get rid of the card, and then like your next turn, like they don't play another Kuzan, and you can like deal damage or whatever, or wall up, and then you slap this card down, the game's over because you drew 4 cards. So that's pretty much it for this, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I gave you my little matchup explanation at the end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And thank you to everybody, Victor, Oscar, Danny, especially, Nolan, Braden, just everybody at my locals for helping me get the deck put together. I'm super happy with it, and I look forward to tweaking it a little bit and then letting you guys know my successes or failures with it. And I'll see you guys next time. It's Marcus from TCG Discussions, signing off. Laters.